So John's wife, who produces the shows, asked me if I wouldn't mind dressing like an actual hippie. And I said, I've been waiting for this for, been waiting for this for 40 years now. Are you kidding? When there were hippies, I thought it was cool back then. So let my freak flag fly and do the whole thing, man. Where's his face? Where is he?
Hey, James.
Hey, there you are.
There you are. Virtual
Good morning.
hug.
I hope I didn't. I hope I haven't taken you too far away from your bike riding this morning.
No, I've been in the workshop most of the day, but yeah, just getting on with things. And how are you doing? Are you okay? I'm
good, man. Like I was just telling Jack, man, we have a brand new president, so we still have that new president smell in the air, which is
it's been a interesting time, isn't it?
Nothing 4 years can't fix, right?
Because what's the time there? It's probably 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, which isn't tragic. It's just my schedule since the pandemic started. This is about my shower time.
Well, we won't keep you too long.
No, man, I got all day. I have all day. I'm not going anywhere.
I mean, if I'm correct, I'm looking up at that wall behind you, and I think that might be the guitar you lent me at the whiskey.
The Yamaha. That one over there. Yeah, the Yamaha. Absolutely. That's I'm terrible because I've forgotten what the name of it is. So, sorry,
it's
Yamaha.
That thing
people.
with 6 strings, two more.
No, it's
than a bass.
Got the big. Yeah, it's got the big Bigsby. Yeah, that's it. And you handled it handily.
Well, what a night. Yeah.
I'm dumbfounded by that Gibson. What is that? A Ripper back there? What do you got going back there with the blonde neck?
Oh yeah, that is it's a Ripper, exactly. Yeah. Oops.
Man,
it's it's an original 70s job,
Yeah. I mean, they only made the maple necks back then. That's a very cool instrument.
Yeah, and
is it the 3 pickup one? Hold it up higher. 2 pickups. Okay, because they had a 3 pickup, and then they had a slidey pickup.
And
one.
The grabber's got the slidey ones, isn't it? You can adjust the
which is like slightly different this way, slightly different that way. I never got the point of that. It's cool, man.
Yeah, we got a few old instruments knocking about. And the one regret I have is when I was at school, when I was about 15, I was just learning to play the guitar, and my dad lent me the Les Paul, a 15-year-old kid with a Les Paul. It was like...
Yeah. It's overqualified.
I had no idea. But my friend of mine who was in the same room, in the same dormitory, Andy, he wanted to play the bass. So my dad said, well, I've got an EB3L. You can lend Andy the bass. So there's me with a Les Paul. Like I'm 15, can't play jack shit, And there's Andy with a Gibson EB3L long scale. Yeah. And then about a year later, we were still playing. And my dad said, oh, yeah, if Andy wants that bass, let him have it.
No way.
So we are minus an EB3L, which I would absolutely love as a, just to knock about and play.
I think he let you have it, your dad. I have an interesting EBO story. Okay. Back when in the a long time ago, I was in my 20s. I was playing with a guy named Bobby Rondinelli and his brother Teddy on guitar. Bobby Rondinelli played drums in the band Rainbow from the 80s, right? So he's a very well-known drummer, actually. A great player. Ray Gillen was our singer, but before that, they were still trying to put together a band. So their original bass player and singer were, let me take this out of my ear, it's a little hard to talk. Their original bass player and singer were a guy named Jeff Fenholt, who sang Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway in the starring role as JC himself, and Felix Pappalardi from Mountain on bass, right? And when they called me up, Felix had been basically killed by his wife. He was shot. I mean, it's one of those tragic Hollywood rock and roll stories, but it happened anyway. So I go out to audition at Bobby's house, and he still had the bass. Now, this is the bass. If you're like if you're a rock and roll historian, this is the very bass that he played at Woodstock, with Mountain. And it was actually, EBO.
EBO, the short scale.
Yeah, just the one pickup, and you know, the strings were like that high off the thing. You barely hold them down.
Yeah.
And so I got to play that, and I guess the funny thing about that was, I digress, but it's kind of funny. So I showed up, and I had like an Ibanez bass or something that I could afford, and I was playing it, and it was very clean and lovely and all that stuff. And so he says, "Here, play this." And I played, and it's got that big giant humbucker in the front, right? Yeah. Too much magnet, not enough high end and all that. And he puts it into a small acoustic amp, and then he just jacks up all the 3 knobs, right? And it goes, you know, it has that sound, you know. I think Felix used to call it the monster, like turn on the monster, right? And he goes, "Can you play like this?" And I was thrilled and confused all at the same time, because it sounded exactly like the underbiased, horrible fucking Fender 100-watt amp that I had been playing block parties with. You didn't want to say
anything.
No, I said I totally know how to play with the sound, but I always thought this wasn't a good sound. You know? And so, he actually, that moment kind of put me on a path of like, okay, I can be a little more reckless with my bass sound.
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, that distorted sound, we were talking to JJ Burnell yesterday from the Stranglers, the British.
Yeah, he knows something about that.
Yeah, and he started off with a Marshall guitar amp, and his sound pretty much stayed pretty distorted all the way through the whole band's career. So it's, it suits some things, doesn't suit everything, does it? But
what is it that Lemmy famously said? The story as it goes was he was at a sound check, and he had a sound guy bring up the monitor, right? And he's like calling to the guy. He goes, "What's that noise? What's that noise?" And he goes, "Oh, here." He goes, "You hear that horrible sound coming out of the monitor? Do you hear that?" And he goes, the monitor guy goes, "Well, that's my bass. Turn it up."
Yeah. I don't know. No, well, great to chat with you, James, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, keep in business. I see that you still. I mean, I follow you on online, and still working up the machines and keeping staffed and all that stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah. We got a lot of new stuff going on. I've nearly finished the machines. I've been building them for a couple of years, and all that crap, But it's just gotta. It seems like musicians and people are playing more than ever, I think, now. People are stuck at home. They're finding out how to record stuff on their Macs or whatever,
Oh, you've been ahead of that curve for years.
Yeah. That hasn't changed. I'm still doing the same thing. But I guess you're in your studio then, aren't you? There.
This is my space. Yeah.
Yeah. That's your man cave, as we call it.
It's not much. Well, yeah. So it's more of a hovel. But it keeps me off the street,
Yeah.
This is when somebody sends me some music to record for them. I'm facing the speakers. This is
you got everything there you need. Yeah.
Yeah. I tried to set it up so everything's as you can see, in an arm's reach, so I can kind of move pretty quickly.
So you got that nice, looks like a nice acoustic. The up there on the top right.
Yeah, these are all Yamahas.
Okay.
With them forever. They're really great sounding instruments, and they're most of my outlines are done that way. I've got another one sitting here. Let's see. In honor of the NAMM Show we're not doing, I should probably slap something, right?
Yeah. Right? Sounding good.
I just got nostalgic for a minute.
Tight as anything. I mean, you take that for granted, but because not everybody can play tight, can they? Really tight. I mean,
oh, you know what? I tell my students this. It's they always go, "Oh my God, how can you do this?" I've been doing this for 50 years. I better be able to fucking do it. You know what I mean? It's like my job. It's like going in and going to a shoemaker and the bottom of the sole is flapping everywhere you go.
Yeah.
After 50 years, if he doesn't have it by then.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, my whole thing is like, if I look back, because I have more time to think about my past now, I really wanted to be like an every bass player. I didn't want to just be a rock player.
No.
So I'd sit and just, something came on the radio if it tickled me. Last night I was listening to heavy weather I was listening to Weather Report.
Weather Report, yeah.
I've touched all that stuff before, but, I kind of like it because on a lot of that music for Jocko, it's more of his kind of lyrical stilted music, playing. and I can latch onto that very easily. And, you know, I grabbed some of that the other day. And I've done that, you know, if a disco song had come on back in the 80s, or, you know, I didn't much care for that music, 70s, didn't much care for that music at the time. Now it's nostalgic and I love it, but I would still just make myself play along with it and say, well, how do you do that? You know?
Yeah, some of this music, I think, like you say, like the disco era, you know, the Saturday Night Fever stuff. At the time, I think it was probably dissed. You know, people said, "Oh, it's terrible," but actually, when you listen back now, you know, it sounds good. And the stuff I think stuff that's coming out now, probably it was too derivative. But anyway, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, that is another conversation. But I can, you know, the thing is, I think really I think it just challenged my testosterone at the time. Right. If I really have to be honest, you know, because I was like, I want to rock. You know, when you're 19, you want to rock. You know, you want to go. You know.
Yeah. Well, look, James, I'm going to pass you over to Jack.
This seems so unnatural without a pint in our hands.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have that famous photo from about 1995 when you were with Slash.
Yes.
I can't remember. I think we were at the Kentish Town Forum. I think it was that venue in North London.
You have so many more brain cells than
I
do.
You know, yeah.
I will group with you on that. But I know we did it. We did a photo shoot back then too in the daytime. So I think you're right. I do. It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a long time ago, isn't it? 2020 something.
Not as long as it's going to be.
Yeah. Well, look, James, lovely to speak to you.
And you too, man.
Yeah, and
I got a big hug coming for you when I get to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's hope we can get together at some point this year, anyway. So you know.
Yeah, well, they're looking, you know, put a timestamp on this. They're looking at later on into the fall to get it all going again, and hopefully the world can.
Yeah,
that's what I'm looking forward to. Well, until then, I'm sure you'll have about 3 or 4 more albums out that I'll get to listen to.
I'm always writing, but. Yeah, it's been really good to talk to you. So yeah, I'm going to pass you over to Jack.
All right, let's do the thing. God bless you, my friend.
Yeah, all right, James.
Stay as safe as you can.
Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
All right, sounds great. Bye. Get to work.
Yeah, I will. You take care. Bye.
Jack, you're back. I've missed you so.
I think we kind of covered a lot of the stuff with Jason. I was going to ask, you know, just what you've been up to, etc. What's been impacted by the last year. But were you still playing with John Fogerty up until last year? Was there any plans for touring in 2020 that had to change?
Yeah, no, we had a full we had with John, we had a full schedule. Did you know? And we should have just been finishing up in Vegas again by now. And I just watched those dates come and go. Like they just kept holding on to them just in case. But excuse me, kept holding on to them just in case. I also had a bunch of gigs with the Kings of Chaos, which is that all-star band, and we were planning some stuff with my new band, Firstborn, which is a great new band that I've been working with Chris Adler playing drums and Garish Pradhan from India singing and Myron playing guitar. He lives out here.
Okay.
And that's what, you know, what I did during my summer vacation in the pandemic was, get together with these guys and put together an EP and make a band. So I think in the not too far flung future, we'll take that out on the road as well.
How were you doing recording that? Was that all remotely?
It had to be remote. We just we couldn't manage anything else. And it started out as I did there's this other all-star metal band that I travel the world with called Hail, right? And that's and at this point, Chris Adler, it's interchangeable. We just get different people to go out to the furthest regions, literally the furthest regions of the world from America, and bring metal to the people, and it works. It's a great experience. The first time we ever did it, going back about maybe 7 or 8 years, we went to, where did we go? Siberia. We got on the Trans-Siberian Express or the train guitars on our backs and stopped in all those little towns, including playing Russia and all that to start with. But, this is the spirit of this thing, go down to South America, like to the furthest points where nobody's been. This last time we went to Bahrain and Dubai, and we were supposed to move on from there, but, something happened anyway. But we played some good shows there, and I got to hang out with Chris, who I'd met previously when Lamb of God had opened up for Megadeth when I was in Megadeth.
Cool.
And oddly, Chris ended up being in Megadeth too. And him and I hit it off because personality-wise and everything. And he said he's not in Lamb of God anymore. So he was saying, well, I asked him, what are you going to do? He goes, I don't know. I just want to make music, see which way the wind blows. And I admire that because I'd been there several times in my career. And I said, well, don't forget to call me if you want a bass player. And he did. And he just started sending music over the internet. He had been already working along with Myron, our guitar player. And we just started like making stone soup out of it. Everybody throw something in, whatever we had. And he went to India during this early period, and he was doing clinics there. And they assigned him a band, and the band was Girish and the Chronicles, and Girish is the singer. He calls me up from India, Chris, and he says, I found our singer. And I was like, oh, we have a band. Okay. And so he played this guy for me, and he's just fabulous. So we've just literally, in very short order, within 4 months, we had an EP of 5 or 6 songs, and we just keep making music. We've got more stuff coming out at the end of the month. And so we're just putting it all in the bank.
I guess for you, it's very important to get that balance between making your own music and playing in, a band.
I think it's important to most musicians, but for me, I like having the job. I really love playing with John Fogerty. It's been 5-6 years now. And I like that consistency of like, okay, John picks all kinds of different music, so we're never locked into the set. But there's a familiarity of like punching the clock and doing it and going out and playing for the audiences and having it all organized. But there's another, there's that excitement of having something new, and just not really knowing exactly where it fits or who wants it and how it works, only knowing that the other people you're making music with you're inspired by. And I think that's where this fits. And, that's really the life and breath of, I think, I've been doing this forever, but it's nice to feel that feeling again, to think that, oh, this is a fresh new band and I'm excited about the music and the people that I'm playing with, and I respect them all, musically. And so that's, I think that's the real draw. I wouldn't say I'm lazy, but I've been doing this long enough to where I just like something dependable that I know is happening. This is not that. Yeah. This is like just throwing a stone and seeing how many times it'll skip across the ocean, but that's exciting. So I could use I guess I could use more excitement now. I think the pandemic's been exciting enough. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I know some musicians who are like you say, the jobbing musicians, who session guys, etc., who tour, and they haven't had their own music necessarily, or they haven't got their own releases. So they've been hit the hardest, I think, from the pandemic, because the only kind of music they were doing was going out and touring. So
right. No, it's without a doubt a creative time, but there's so many other, there's so many other people out of work doing just their jobs too, so, I don't really, I don't feel especially, more put upon than anybody else. I actually feel like we're all in a big, we're all in this big, horrible lifeboat, and we're trying not to jump overboard, we're trying to keep everybody on board, because I mean, I think what we do is, we go and we kind of create that social glue. We go out and we perform for people, which we love to do and like to make music. But I think those gatherings, it's almost like a church in a way. People gather and they feel a community and a communion. And that's what all music is, but rock and roll especially. That's why everybody picks their factions of what kind of rock and roll they want, heavy metal and this and that.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really wise to pull the plug on this stuff. I remember doing some gigs early on and thinking, this isn't a good idea. We shouldn't be encouraging gathering people,
Mm-hmm.
and you do everything you can do to be safe with the information given. But, in my heart, I thought we got to pull the plug on this and stop it, because then we can't get back to it, get too far away from it.
And for proper rock music, like you were saying, you need the gathering, you need the
You need the sweat. You got to feel your brother sweating on you, your brother and sister sweat all over you. You got to be able to toss people over the crowd and stuff. That's for proper rock music. Yeah.
How did you get into playing with John? Because you were obviously in heavier bands, metal bands, heavier rock bands before. How did that gig come about? I'm interested.
Well, as I told Jason before, I've never considered myself a heavy metal band player. I just consider myself a musician. Like that's, but when I got into it, I just finished in college. I went to college for a couple of months, and I was sitting first chair playing French horn in the orchestra. But it was Brooklyn College, so it wasn't vibing with me. At the same time, I had been playing bass and singing, and I'd always played guitar and sang and like rock music and popular music and all that. And so I decided to just go, I'm just going to rock. I'm going to rock. It worked out okay for me, but at the moment, who knew, but that was all based on, a young man's aggression, you have all that kind of energy and you want to put it somewhere, and unless we're playing Stravinsky every night in the orchestra, the Rite of Spring, I couldn't really always find it there. So I put down the French horn and picked up the bass. Just before that, though, before I picked up the bass, I was a strummer. And, in 1969, 70, when I was 10 or 11 years old, I started playing guitar. I could sing like a bird. I just naturally could, find my way around melodies and had a pretty decent voice, I guess. Everybody seemed to like to listen to me. But that was what was on the radio of all the Creedence stuff. And so that was my repertoire. Like whatever was on the radio is what I would learn and sing. And I'd go to like public libraries and talent contests, like wherever they'd book me, kid. I'd go in there with my acoustic guitar and Glenn Campbell hair, I think I had back then. And I'd go and do this. And so all these years later, I put together this all-star jam in Burbank for a couple of years. And it was a great thing. Nobody was really doing that at the time. I was just trying to help a friend of mine's restaurant to survive. And he had like blues nights and it wasn't really drawing a lot of people. And so we started doing this, and I started inviting my big shot friends, musician friends from notable rock bands down. It started getting its own momentum. Anyway, one of the first people I invited down was Kenny Aronoff, who played with John Mellencamp in the 80s, but is also like one of the premier recording drummers. I mean, he probably is on they always say like 6 feet away from you, there's always a spider. Like any song you hear, Kenny's like on the next song. And so I met him at a session, and he impressed me so much just because he was in such service to the music we were doing, and I hadn't really seen that, that I invited him to do this thing. And I said, there isn't a lot of money, it's pocket money and some drinks. And he was like, but I only work on the weekends with Fogerty, so that'd be perfect, And so that's, he agreed to do that with me, and that really elevated the whole thing. And so him and I became really tight as a rhythm section, just out of due diligence, just doing it every week. And so there was an open spot in John's band, and ironically, I'd just seen them on the Tonight Show out here, the late night show. Mm-hmm. And I was commenting, like, your bass player is just amazing. They're playing some new song that John had done at the time. And he said, yeah, well, that guy's not in the band anymore. I said, oh, well, I'd like to be in that band. Yeah. That's a dream, to play with a guy like John Fogerty and to play with Kenny Aronoff, but really, John Fogerty. And so he said, yeah, I already brought you up, but they're looking for just some young kids because they had, he's got his kids, he's got his sons in the band. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, fine. And then a couple of weeks later, Kenny tells me they found a guy, but he's like, he kind of plays like you do. And he's kind of got a sound like you do, but he's not nowhere near what you're doing, So I told John again, I said, really, before you make a decision, you got to have my friend James out here. And so I guess he listened to Kenny and had me out for another run of auditions. He auditioned probably, I don't know, maybe 40 bass players. And in LA, you can find them, by the way. And I remember going to the audition and thinking, I was listening to, John plays pretty loud, and I could hear it spilling out of the rehearsal place. And everybody was great. They all sounded, the music is not that challenging, but there's a way you play it, and that's what makes it work. And they all sounded great to me. So I said, how's he going to pick me over all these guys? And I went in there and sure he saw something in me that Kenny was trying to tell him, because I just did what I do. And that was really great because, you know, to have somebody who's literally like one of your early heroes, you know, to go, yeah, well, you're the guy that I've been looking for. You know, and 6 years later, I still never get tired of playing that stuff. And I never get tired of touring with it.
It wasn't because, I'm just thinking that they might have thought, he's not the right style, looking at previous bands you played in, but you've obviously
I thought that might have played into it. I don't really have any information, I don't know, but I thought they might have gone, oh, Megadeth. No, probably not. You know, we don't need a heavy metal guy here. You know, I could walk in with my hair down like this. You know, the first thing they asked me was like, do you mind cutting it some? And I actually did. I cut it all the way up to really? About there. Yeah, but they like me just fine now, so I ponytail it back. Like some 70s guy. But actually, it came in handy because we did this whole 1969 tribute to Woodstock.
Oh,
and so,
okay.
So John's wife, who produces the shows, asked me if I wouldn't mind dressing like an actual hippie. And I said, I've been waiting for this for 40 years now. Are you kidding? When there were hippies, I thought it was cool back then. So I'm, you know, let my freak flag fly and do the whole thing, man.
I'm interested as well about the connection with Rotosound and how that started, you know, from how early on you were using the strings. And I know that you and Jason are good friends. And
yeah, Jason's a lovely fellow. And I'm just so fortunate to just know him. I mean, because I always had a feeling about Jason, okay? Because he was a great hang, right? And he wasn't a pandering person or anything like that. Just like a good, you know, I guess you would call it a good bloke, you know, like you just meet the guy and you go, he could be a friend of mine, right? And we did become friends. I suspected, and then I found out how musically prolific the guy is. And, you know, that just blew me away. I was like, I'd like to think I'm his first fan. I'm not, but, you know, when he started playing me his music sheepishly on it, like on a little phone.
Yeah.
He's very worried about what I would think. And, it was so much better than most of the stuff that, you know, people come up and play with me. And it was raw, but it was raw in the best of ways, you know, and it was such a wonderful throwback to, you know, to that wonderful 60s psychedelia era that I was, you know, enthralled with him. But I digress. But anyway, okay. So I love Jason. I have my flag up, right? But going back, 1970, I think it was 72. I go and visit my cousin and my family out in California for the summer. And, you know, so I'm hanging out with my cousin a lot, and he's kind of turning me on to, here's the great music. My cousin's an older guy, played guitar, had a band, you know, and I was interested in bands, but I was a solo acoustic guitar player at that point, remember? But I had also decided that I was going to make the move to bass, and that's another long story that I'll digress some other time. But, you know, so I started kind of, in a way, roadieing, you know, whatever, drinking beers and, you know, watching him play these little gigs and stuff. And his bass guy was telling me, oh, these are the strings, man. These are the Rotosounds. And I was like, well, what's the difference? He goes, oh, they just sound better. And, you know, the Allman Brothers and, you know, he started going down a litany of people who use them. So I thought, well, this is what I have to use. So when I went home, you know, I still had the Labella flats, you know, or the Fender flats or whatever came on the bass in those days. I immediately ran out and bought a set of Rotosounds, but he never delineated that it should have been the round wounds. So I got a set of flats.
Did you? Okay.
So I went up to my local music store, Maggio's Music, on 18th Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, which is it was a totally Italian immigrant neighborhood at the time. And, you know, I said, I need Rotosound bass strings. And he hands me the package. And back then it was $36 in 1972. Wow. That's a bankroll, man. You know,
half the cost of the bass.
Yeah. Well, the bass I had cost me $15.
Oh.
So, you know, I was like, I decided to be a bass player. I was like, what have I got myself into here?
Yeah.
Anyway, I put them on and they sounded really nice. Okay. But not too divergent from what I was using. And, you know, mind you, back then I had no sophistication about tone or anything like that. I didn't know that on those strings, if you kind of push up the mids and the treble, it would have a real personality. You know, I just thought, well, the bass seems still round like it always did, you know? And so it wasn't until a year later, I started playing bands and reading the magazines, and I Stanley Clarke and all this, and round rounds, rip up your fingers, but boy, that's the sound. And so I got my first set and put it on the worst jazz bass ever made by Fender that I owned, and I didn't realize it at the time. Just and it made it sound incredible. All of a sudden, those round rounds really had like an alternate personality. And I didn't know exactly what to make of it, but I realized that the tonality and the clarity of it and the fundamentals were far easier to hear and display and play. And it did, it did have those, those ridges that kind of really roughed up my my calluses, but in a different way, because before that, if I tried to slide on the bass, it would be like instant, pain and burning, my fingers would burn. This was something else. It made my fingers better, made me a better player because I could hear what I was doing. And so I was sold. And basically I just kind of never looked back. I just always used them. I used to do that because, I'd play clubs and make $40 here and there, so I couldn't keep changing the strings all the time, especially during the summer. So I read Stanley Clarke and said he used to boil them out. He used to put them in a pot and clean them, clean them out, and you get and so I was like devout, I used to do that all the time because I wasn't going to buy another, crappy set of strings and use that. I'm going to use these Rotosounds, damn it. And so I'd get 2 or 3 more, uses out of them doing it that way. And then finally, I think when White Lion was ready to sign, they like as a company, as a, White Lion, the management, they said, here's your new strings. It's GHS. And they were fine, but they weren't nice. Didn't sound like me anymore. It sounded kind of like soft, and it wasn't happening. And there was, they're stainless steels. So after, just before we had started recording the Pride record, I asked the manager, can you get in touch with Rotosound, see if there's anything we can do there? And, they were great. I mean, they were wonderful. They said, sure, we'll give you a shot. And then once the record took off, it was a no-brainer. They were like, okay, great. You're one of our endorsers now. And then I met Jason. And like I never thought like from a string company, you could get like, close and personal with anybody in these companies, it's because it seems like such a utilitarian thing. Yeah. But between the history of the company and knowing the lineage, where we are now, knowing Jason, and just how lovely he is and how committed he is to keeping this company afloat and how reverent he is to its history. It's like, I can't see myself even if they suddenly started making, if his machines didn't work and they were the worst strings in the world, I think I'd squint my way through it.
Yeah, it's a great company to have joined. I joined earlier this year, just after NAMM Show, where we met in person then as well.
Absolutely.
And I mean, obviously, it was one of those brands that you just had in your head, along with Fender and Gretsch and Marshall and Orange. But then looking into it, you're kind of like, wow, all these people played with them, and they're actually producing this sound, which is different from other strings, like you say.
I mean, Chris Squire alone, right? Let's start there. I mean,
that's such a great example, Chris Squire, of that swing bass sound. It's like punches through the mix, doesn't it? It's so strident.
Certainly Stanley Clarke.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jocko used them. I think that's that sound. I'm pretty sure that's. There's just something about them, and to me, as I go on, my journey of kind of playing bass and deciding why and what I'm doing, as we all are, I'm just so used to the tension of these strings, and it's different than the other strings, And so for me, it would be like recalibrating everything to go in, some other direction.
Yeah.
So there's all that in the above, and I used to really like to change them as often as possible. I mean, it's not a very economic way to run your business, but now I kind of take delight and see how long I can leave them on, and still have them the round rounds, and still have them be useful.
Are they the only Rotosound strings that you're using? Just the the round ones, or do you have any bass?
No. I've used the flats. Whenever I'm called to do something more retro, I'll string up something. I did a bunch of stuff on David Lee Roth's record. Diamond Dave was the record, and there's a bunch of songs because we were doing some great old 60s covers, and so. It's so funny because it's still me playing, so it's not quite as accurately, retro as it should be, but it totally gives the vibe. And when you're playing on them, it feels that way too. I use the guitar strings, and I love those. It just has they all have a wonderful clang to them. And almost an inaccuracy that works, that's really colorful sounding. And I don't mean that in a negative way, like inaccuracy. I just mean that like they kind of vibrate like very aggressively. Which other strings, like the Fender strings, don't do that,
Yeah, well, I think it obviously started with Jason's dad, James, making the bass strings. And I think it's all come down there with the same philosophy for making the guitar strings.
Yeah. It feels like it does the same thing.
So yeah, we're doing this for NAMM for their Believe in Music Week, and I know that you guys had a jam last year, the Rotosound jam, that hopefully will continue when and if NAMM gets back together.
We'll get back to it, yeah.
But you've been to a few NAMM shows, I imagine. Are there any special memories you have? Any funny stories from NAMM?
I have no funny stories from NAMM because the thing turns into it all turns into a blur. Like it's one, anybody who's gone to this convention knows that just by the sheer size of it and the sheer amount of people, my perspective is obviously going to be different than a lot of like manufacturers' perspectives, because I'm there trying to do a few things. I'm there. First of all, I'm there as like, kind of a guy who's interested in looking at the newest and grooviest stuff, right? I also want to catch up with the people that I've been doing business with on the phone and get to meet them and do all that. In some regards, I'd like to see if there's something I can drum up as far as helping my musical thing with some piece of equipment that I could be considering, And then there are the fans, and depending on what band I'm in, like that's the weirdest thing, because I love meeting the fans, like anywhere, But for me, I've been in like how many, Megadeth and Black Label Society and, all these bands that they change over time. And so for me, the funniest thing was like when I was in Black Label, because that's like a motorcycle gang across the world. So I get like, that was the only time it really felt weird to me. Like I'd walk 2 paces and, hey, brother. And then all of a sudden 4 big burly guys would come up and throw their arm around me and spill beer all over me and take a photo and then go, where's Zach? That whole thing. So I think that's the only thing that kind of stands out, like those particular years when I was playing in Black Label Society was probably the most unique, because it's a place of business, really, And
it's funny, isn't it? It's kind of, it's all labeled as a kind of music merchants show, and only you get your pass if you're there for business, etc. But there's a lot of fans, there's a lot of music happening, there's a lot of meetups. Like you say, for different people it's going to be a different thing.
Yeah, I mean, a few of them, I think it's just, I only remember them in a hangover state, because by the end of the night, it's kind of like everybody's like, oh man, it's been a long day, the bar, let's go.
Yeah.
But, I really enjoy going there because I like I said before, I actually, I met Jason while I was on tour, not at the NAMM Show, but then, I get to see him every year, and, for me, it's cheaper than a flight to London. But other manufacturers that I've become friends with, it's nice to spend a little time, with them and just kind of catch up and shoot the breeze and see what they're, if they're thinking of doing anything interesting in the future, or just what their lives are like, who got married and who had kids and stuff,
Yeah, that's it. It's good. Cool. Okay, James. Well, thanks very much. We'll speak soon. Stay safe.
We will. Yeah.
Well.
All right, man.
Enjoy the new
see
president.
When the world opens. I will enjoy. It still has that new president smell. It's wonderful.
Cool. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.